I want to welcome my guest today, Amber Theoharis. She's formerly of the NFL Network. She did NFL and Westwood One. I mean, she is an award-winning journalist. How are you today, Amber?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm excited to be on, even though I don't like the name of your podcast, I'm excited to be on.
Well, it's okay. You could be a Baltimore Ravens fan. We're all good with it. Amber from the Baltimore, essentially the Baltimore area. She's from the Frederick, Maryland area. That being said, Amber, high school, Middletown High School, what was your passion in sports at that school? What drove you to want to get into sports there?
I think if you grow up in Middletown, sports is just part of your life. The Valley is just such a sports heavy area, and I came from a athletic family. You know, my uncle, Tim Theoharis, you coached with him in Montgomery County and in Prince George's County. And so I just come from a sports family. It was our love, and just started playing sports at a young age. And going to Middletown, you know, you always want to make the teams there because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be in the state championship. Yeah. And they still continue that tradition today. And I graduated, you know, over 20 years ago. But when I was there, I played soccer. That was probably my favorite sport. And under Coach John Miller, we had a huge program there. And then Mark Miller was the basketball coach. So I played basketball with my sister on the same team. And, you know, Middletown won a state championship in women's basketball when I was there. And so it's just a great program to be part of. I also lettered in softball. So it was all, yeah, well, I'm, you know, my uncle, he's a softball coach too, on top of football. So I just loved playing sports and knew I wanted to do something in sports when I got out.
Well, that's awesome. Did you play travel softball at all?
I did.
Who'd you play for?
For Middletown. Oh, you mean for like an AAU team?
Yeah.
No, I did not. I played an AAU basketball. I played for Mid-Maryland Magic and a couple other. They're probably not even around anymore. This was in the early 90s.
You'd be surprised how many of those organizations are still out there. All right, so you graduate from Middletown. You go on to the University of Maryland, a very prestigious school. You were in the journalism school there, which is also extremely prestigious. Who impacted you? Who was that individual that got you really fired up to get into this career path?
Well, I was really lucky that I just knew from a young age I wanted to go into sports broadcasting. I think I wrote it on a 7th grade guidance counselor report. My mom said, "What do you want to do?" And so that was the earliest I remember writing it down. But I was really focused in college, and I was really lucky to have a combination. There was one professor, Dr. Lee Thornton, God rest her soul. She passed away a couple years ago, but she was a newswoman who had worked in the business for a long time and then went on to academia. And she was so real with me about what I was going to be up against. And, you know, she let me know that I could write and I had that talent. She could see that, but she wanted me to go into it really wide-eyed. And now looking back 27 years later, she was a major influence. I'm so thankful for she didn't make it all rosy. You know, she didn't make it sound like it's going to be glamorous, and it never really has. So she was right. And then I had another, she's actually a professor at University of Maryland now, but I was working for her at ABC News, Cindy Wright. She was a producer. Her son was in my class. And so I went over to her house and saw Emmys on her wall. And I was like, who's your mom? You know, can she give me an internship? And she gave me my start at ABC News in DC. And it went from there, but she was my mentor that gave me my first gig. And so I had a lot of great people early on.
You did news and you did sports radio, all that stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that early part of your career? Because you've come a long way. I mean, you've built that, what I call that tool belt to get to where you need to be. So talk a little bit about that early part of your career.
Yeah, the early part of my career was fun and stressful and hard, and you're broke. You're literally a starving journalist. I waited tables on the side while I was working. I started my on-air career at WBOC in Salisbury, Maryland. Yeah. So I would get off, I would cover, you know, soybean prices and things that mattered to the people of the Eastern Shore. And I was completely out of my element. You know, I knew nothing about agriculture, but it was a job. It had a TV signal. My face was on air. Yeah. And I got great experience and moved on from there, but always wanting to do sports. So, yeah, I would leave there and go sling steaks at Mackey's in Ocean City, Maryland. I was a waitress, and I would make more in one night at Mackey's than I would make in almost 2 weeks working as a reporter 9 to 5. So that's the reality of the business, but I was young, I had no kids, I wasn't married, and we just had a lot of fun. Everybody was in the same position that I worked with. We were all broke and young and dreamers.
It's amazing when you start thinking now as we're talking, right? So you go back and you think about that letter in 7th grade and that influence while you're in college, and then what you had to do that was just rock bottom. Because I go back and I reflect on that stuff as I'm going through my career path in life, and you're like, wow, did I really push through that? Because I hated that sometimes.
Yeah, I think I know we'll talk about my film in a little bit, but Michael Phelps, I had a chance to work with him, and one of the quotes he had in my film, he said the difference between those that are good and those that are great, the ones that are great, they do things they don't want to do.
Right.
As you said, push through it.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go to work there every day. I had no interest in what I was reporting on, but it's what I had to do.
Yeah.
I saw a bigger picture, and I think the people that are great at what they do, they realize there's going to be parts that aren't fun, and you really have to sacrifice. But if you really want something, you've got to fight through those and push through those. And that's been a lot of my life has been like that.
Sure. You go on and you start working at MASN. That had to be so thrilling for you, somebody who's a Ravens fan and Orioles fan. What was your most incredible experience you had working for the Orioles? Because I know you used to do a lot for the Orioles initially.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm known for in the Baltimore, Washington market the most. You know, I still will get tweets of people saying, we miss you in Birdland.
Yeah.
And my goodness, I left, 9 years ago, and we'll still get that. I was really, really blessed to, and I didn't go straight from Salisbury to MASN. There was many years in between there of
Right.
gap and jobs. And so I never want to portray that it was this wonderful progression. It was tough. But once I got hired by MASN, I was in awe that I had a chance to not only cover my hometown team, because next to Maryland basketball, probably the Baltimore Orioles were my number one love as a child, and Cal Ripken was my childhood hero. And so to be able to cover the organization that you remember sitting on a porch with your dad watching games, eating peanuts, because you didn't have the opportunity to go to the games because they're expensive. That was really surreal for me, sitting in the Orioles dugout at Camden Yards, the most beautiful park I think in the country.
Yeah.
Sitting there in the dugout and having these people that you looked up to, the Jim Palmers and the Cal Ripkens and Brady Andersons, like walk past me and be like, "Hi, Amber." I remember first time Cal Ripken called me by name when I didn't introduce myself. I was floored.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the best moment of my life. I was just sitting there eating an Egg McMuffin at spring training. And he said, "Oh, hi, Amber." And I was like, so yeah, just working, that organization really took me in, Peter Angelos, everybody from top to bottom as a hometown girl. And the fans were always there for me and knew that my first love was my city and my state and where I was from, and that I would do everything to represent our city the right way. So I look back on those years. We were a terrible baseball team. Oh my gosh, it was the worst years of the Orioles. Terrible. And I traveled with the team. I did 152 of 162 games. So it was a long summer. But man, how lucky was I? Like nobody had it better than me. Traveling on a team with my childhood favorite team. How cool.
Yeah.
On a plane.
Your worst day was somebody's best day ever, you know?
I never lost sight of that. I really didn't. Maybe it's just because I come from humble beginnings. You know, my family, they're not big stars. Nobody else was in this industry. And for me to be a kid from Frederick that had made it to Baltimore
right.
was a big deal. I mean, I still look back and can't even believe I'm living in LA and doing what I'm doing now. Because that was like, I thought I could die happy at that point.
I'll share with you, I am an Orioles fan as well. My son and I go to the games all the time. He's a kids club member, you know.
Oh, I love the kids club.
we go to the Keys. We are so devastated right now that they may pull the plug on the Keys. Although,
I know minor league baseball is so affected because they run by the gate. They're funded by their gates, and if they can't have fans, they can't survive. That's tough. That's really, because I grew up going to McCurdy Field in Frederick. That's how old I am of a Keys fan.
But you know, they actually had 250,000 people come through the gate last year at Keys Stadium. So that in and of itself, and they had the All-Star game. That should tell you something about the fan base here. And I recently read that the owner, he not only owns the Keys, but I think he owns the Bay Sox and another AAA team.
Norfolk, yeah, in Virginia.
And he said, you know, hey, look, if it's about money and putting some money into the stadium to keep the team there, I'm going to do that. So
that's great.
I took my son to an event they had and talked to Dan Zidelis, and he said that, you know, he's pretty optimistic that the Keys will be one of those teams that makes the cut. They'll be around. So my fingers.
That's an old friend of mine, Dean.
Yep. So how about your most rewarding experience working with the Ravens, covering the Ravens? There had to be something there for you.
Yeah, it was another organization that just took me in, and really, it was such a learning experience. I started pretty young with, you know, covering the Ravens at 24 years old, and I think there were a lot of learning experiences. It's where I learned how to really cover a team from training camp all the way through to the Super Bowl, and I had people like Jonathan Ogden and Ed Reed and Ray Lewis, and so many more. I still keep in touch with a lot of those players. That sometimes we had conflicts, sometimes they weren't happy with me or my questions, and they weren't afraid to embarrass me if I asked the wrong question. But I'll tell you one thing, I learned fast, and I learned kind of that finesse and that relationship between athletes and reporters. And I think a lot of us still have a lot of respect for each other based on what we went through together, because they were young players too.
Yeah.
We were all the same age. And one of the most rewarding and just amazing experiences I've had was last year at the Pro Bowl. I was covering the Pro Bowl, and I saw Orlando Brown Jr.
Mm-hmm.
So Zeus's son, you know, is now a lineman with the Ravens, which is so cool for them. And with Orlando no longer being with us, I walked up to him and I said, I haven't met you, because I was doing national level stuff yet, and he was just a rookie. But I said, I haven't met you yet, but I want to tell you a story about your father. There's two stories I have. One is, we were on the Ravens plane, and we were going to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. And I was sitting there on the team plane, and I watched your dad try to get into the bathroom to use the bathroom. And I remember thinking it was the funniest thing. I said, what do these guys do if they have to use the restroom? That he couldn't get in. Right. So he had to hold it all the way to Pittsburgh because he was too big. It was like trying to fit somebody into a clown car. So and everybody on the plane was dying laughing. And then another experience, I said, I remember in 2004 coming back from training camp in Westminster, Maryland. I was driving from there back to Baltimore, and I saw your dad's Humvee on the side of the road broken down, and he had his kids with him. And I pulled over in a little Chevy Cavalier, and I said, I can't do anything to help you, but I can go and call and get somebody to come. And he's like, oh, thank you, Amber. And Zeus Jr. said to me, you were that lady? I was the 8-year-old kid. I was the 8-year-old kid on the side there, broken down with dad. And ever since then, we've kind of had this special relationship with him, and we talk on social media, and it was just really cool. I think he really appreciated a memory about his father, and that he remembered me and he remembered being there. So there's so many moments like that being able to cover my hometown in any team has allowed me to have.
You know what's neat about that story, those two stories you told? It goes to show people that those guys are human just like everybody else, because everybody sees them with a twinkle in their eye when they see them at training camp, or they go to a game and see them, or they have that quick interaction getting an autograph. But they're just like you and I. We put our pants on, our shirt on every day. We go do our job. They just happen to be professional athletes. So that's so neat. And for him to remember you,
yeah, he was like, I remember this random lady. It was cool. Yeah, it was really cool. He goes, that was you? Because he knew me from NFL Network, but he never put it together. So yeah, they aren't, I feel bad. You know, I'm friends with a lot of athletes, and everybody says they make millions of dollars. I get that. So they're better off than most of us. Right. But that doesn't take away like all the pains of being human and all the pitfalls. And imagine if you go to your work and you have a bad day coaching, or you have a bad day teaching. You come home, you maybe have a glass of wine with your wife, and then you go back and you get another shot. Yeah. They have a bad day at work. They've got millions of people talking about them and saying he's washed up, or this, or he can't do that. And that's tough. That to live under a microscope like that when you're just trying to do your job is difficult.
Yeah, and it goes right here to those guys. They
Oh
start,
yeah.
maybe I am, or maybe I did do that, or maybe I'm not who I thought I really was initially. So yeah, I get that. How different was it being with the Orioles and then the Ravens, or vice versa? How different are those locker rooms?
Oh, it's night and day. I mean, when you cover football and baseball, it's two totally different things. You know, the football players aren't as edgy because they're at home the whole week. So they practice, 6 days a week, 1 day's a walkthrough or a travel day, but
Right.
they're home. They get off at 5 and they go home to their family. So they're much more socialized, if that makes sense. They
Yeah.
live more of a normal life. They only travel 8 days out of the year to go to away games.
Yeah.
So it's a little more lighthearted and fun. It can get really long over the course of a season if they're really struggling. The 2007 Ravens were really struggling, and that was difficult to be in that locker room. But the Orioles clubhouse, I never covered the Yankees or the Red Sox that were really rolling at that time, but I did go to their clubhouses as the away team or the visiting team, and I would talk to Jeter or Alex Rodriguez, and just to feel like the vibe in those clubhouses versus what was going on in a losing team clubhouse. And being a beat reporter in baseball, you're there every single night. You
Right.
go to the park at 2, you guys are all done at 11 or 12 or extra innings or whatever, and then you fly to the next city, getting there at 3 or 4 in the morning. Sometimes they don't want to do an interview. They just don't want to do it, and I get it, because what question am I going to ask them when the answer is, we just don't have hitters on this team, or we really don't have a number 1 or a number 2, and our true number 1 or 2 in our rotation. Our ace right now is really a number 3 on the Yankees rotation. So that was night and day at the time, because the Ravens were good and the Orioles weren't a lot of times. But I think that's just the way the sport is. To do something every single day, you're away from your family 81 days out of the year, that's tough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Your family, I would guess, because I've coached both and I know what the environment's like, I would guess you get that more family environment though with football than you do with baseball.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I want to watch what I say here, but baseball players, it's kind of like a fraternity. It's like dealing with a bunch of, 19-year-old boys. Some of them are 19, but really there's that lack of the failure to launch kind of as adults, because they don't have to. They live in a world where they're with their buddies, flying on a plane and playing poker in the back, and getting to a city, and then you get to hang out in that city. I mean, it's just different. Whereas I feel like the Ravens players had children a lot younger. There was a lot more family environment. They would come home. It's just the sport. I think that's with any roster on any team in any city. If you compare the Patriots and the way they are to the Red Sox, it's probably just very different.
I know you ended up going out and working for the NFL Network. What was that jump like for you? I mean, you went from being very specialized with the Ravens and the Orioles to going to work in that with the NFL Network. How was that? Talk about that for me.
I mean, it was really exciting. It was exciting. You dream about getting an opportunity at the national level to cover, be on a national network. And I had been through so many auditions and so many no's, and you just wonder if it's ever going to happen. And this one audition was a yes. And so, I was a mom. I was a young mom with my first child. And for me and my husband to make that decision to move to Los Angeles was a big one, but it was exciting. And those first couple of years were really fun. I realized quickly how much I didn't know about all 32 teams. You realize when you've been specialized, I could tell you anything about, a 4th receiver on a roster for the Ravens, but
Sure.
you needed to know that about the Chiefs. And so the level of research, just being entrenched and really diving into everything football was not a challenge. It was actually really fun. I mean, my job was to study football. And then I really had a chance to work with some amazing analysts like LaDainian Tomlinson and Deion Sanders, who I knew from the Ravens already, and Willie McGinnis, who I knew from the Patriots. They took me under their wing. And if I didn't know something, I was not embarrassed. I would say, hey, Willie, could you show me the Patriots defense here? Like, what are they doing? And he would break out film. We had the technology to do that. And what I learned from them as far as a football education versus what you learn just kind of covering a team as a reporter was night and day. It helped. I just grew leaps and bounds, and I'm just thankful. I had 8 years there, and I really am thankful for the time I had there.
Do you watch the game differently? Like because I coached football forever, I don't sit down and watch. I just don't sit down and watch football. I sit down and analyze football. I get yelled at all the time by my wife or friends who don't see football the way I see it. Do you watch football differently because of that?
I do, because I'll say things like, still to this day, things that I'll remember. I did game day morning for a while, and so we would fly. Me and Willie were together a lot, and we would fly to, let's say, do the Patriots. So that was 6 hours in a plane. We're sitting next to each other, and he would show me the film of what to expect for the game that we were covering, whether it was the AFC Championship game. And I'll still remember things from those film sessions. Like if I'm watching J.J. Watt, I'll go, watch where he ends up. They just push him down the line against the run. He's so great as a pass rusher, but Willie just doesn't buy into him when it comes, like he's useless against the run, or things that he would say to me. And I'd be like, wow, you remember those things. I go, look, they pushed him all the way down the line. There, he's on the other side. Yeah, like exactly what he was saying. So I still look for those kind of things. I remember the Ravens, nobody could figure out how to stop the Ravens. Well, Bill Belichick did 2 years ago in the playoffs. And I still look at that penny defense, they call it, with one linebacker and everybody else's defensive backs.
Sure.
And I look at what, those guys taught me about. All the Ravens had to do was do this. They just should have run it down their throat and not abandon that. And so now when I see that's kind of, everybody thinks Bill Belichick invented it. He didn't. It's been around, but now it's becoming a more, we could see it more often. So yes, I do watch it differently. I wish I could watch it as a fan. I wish I could, not think of all the things in my brain that happened that week or players I talked to earlier in the week for my radio show. But I think it's a privilege to be able to watch football like that.
But I mean, that's what makes you so unique, because you started buying into it as a young person and you've taken it to a whole nother level as an adult, and you've got all that experience with it. And I love that about talking to you and hearing that. I mean, I love talking football. I love talking the intricacies, X's and O's and everything. Game day for you, NFL Network. What was that like? Because it had to be kind of intense in the studio.
Oh, yeah. And actually, I didn't do a lot of studio work on game day. So most of my studio work was doing during the week. And then I had this great gig where I was anchoring. So Rich Eisen would do game day morning, with Michael Irvin and Kurt Warner, and there's been a couple people go through there. And then I was the anchor that would do whatever the marquee game was. We did sort of like on ESPN College Game Day.
Yeah.
So we would have a set out in the parking lot of Gillette Stadium, and it would be me and an analyst from that team, whether it was James Jones or LaDainian Tomlinson. And we'd had the fans going crazy behind us screaming, so you couldn't really hear yourself. And the energy there, you go into sports because you love being in stadiums and you love being at the games. And then you make it to the national level and you realize you're in studios so much, like you don't even get to go to the games. So after about 4 years, when I got to go back out to do those things as an anchor, that was my favorite thing to do. I would feed off of the crowd. The energy of a live game and a live broadcast at a game is like nothing else. And then when I got to anchor Thursday night football, so I actually was on the field pregame and postgame with, I remember the first one I anchored, it was in Tampa. They're counting me down, and I look to my panel that's with me and it's Marshall Faulk, Deion Sanders, Michael Irvin, and I don't want to jip anybody. I can't remember who else was on it at the time. But, I mean, you look, that's where life hits you. You go, whoa, this is a big deal. It was my first show doing that. And Marshall Faulk looked at me, and he could tell I was kind of like the grandness of the moment was like, oh, man, this is real. And he looked at me when they were counting me down, and he said, a woman of your stature deserves to be here. Enjoy the moment. And it just calmed me down, and we we just went into, and we had a great show. And then just all the fun things like being police escorted out of a stadium, you know, with these stars, and you're thrown into an Escalade, and it's like the Hollywood treatment. And I'm like, the police really get paid to take us out of this? You have to sit in traffic, you know? So just things like that. I'm really thankful for those experiences. They were really cool to live through.
Could 13-year-old Amber ever believe she would get to that point in life?
You know what? If you knew me at 13, and you're going to understand this answer, I would say yes, because I was delusional in my confidence, in my ability to dream. But no, I think I would have told you, yeah, I'm going to be big time, and I'm going to make it to the national level, and I'm going to work. I would have said that because I was just kind of a kid with some swag, and I just was a dreamer. I just was a really big dreamer. But no, I look back and I look at growing up in Middletown, Maryland, and what I do now. My film debuted on HBO, and I still get teary-eyed. Like when I saw my name, you know, under executive producer, like I thought, wow, like I'm just like a Greek kid from Maryland that like, it just hit me. It was wow. I think now being a little older, when I was in everything, it was, no, I got to get to the next level, and I got to get to the, and I never took time to look back and say, you did all right, Amber, like you've done some really cool things. Look back and be so grateful for those moments. And now I really look back at those moments and feel really, really lucky.
You started talking about your documentary that was on HBO, July 29th, it premiered. Go with it. I want to hear more about it. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a cool experience. I got approached to partner with this director to do a film on a bobsledder that had the same eye disease that me and the director had. And we found out it was a really great sports story, and we were going to do this documentary leading back to Pyeongchang, to the Winter Olympics, and
Right.
We're going to tell this guy's story. I'm trying to give you the cliff notes. Fast forward several months into filming, unfortunately the bobsledder took his own life. And you see that in the film, The Weight of Gold. That's the film that actually came out. So when he took his own life 12 days after we filmed with him, we realized there's a opportunity to tell a bigger story here about the mental health of elite athletes. And nobody talks about what they face, and especially Olympians, what they're up against. So we took the opportunity to tell the story, and at the time Michael Phelps was really vocal about his mental state and what he was going through and trying to help others and erase the stigma. And so we brought him on board, and he told his story, and that led, I think we had 10 other gold medalists in the film. Sasha Cohen and Shaun White and the family of Jarrett Peterson, the skier who took his own life.
Right.
I mean, we had Gracie Gold. We had 1 million people in the film,
Apollo
and they were all telling the same story. What?
Apollo Ono?
Apollo Ono. I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot. Like one of our headliners. They were just honest. And that's, as a documentary filmmaker, as a storyteller, as a journalist, you want to shed light on things that need to be told. And this was a story that needed to be told. And it was a long journey to get it made and to get it finally on HBO. But I think when people see the final product, they'll see why we worked so hard and stuck with it for so long. And I'm really proud of the work that me and the rest of the team did, Octagon and Podium Pictures.
Again, people, like, they just don't understand that mental health piece. Like when I teach, that's the very first thing I teach honors health. And that's the very first thing we talk about, because it takes control of your life in every aspect of it. And I'm talking about, I teach 14, 15, 16-year-old kids about health and mental health right out of the gates.
Good for you. Good for you, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people talking about it. So coaches like yourself that deal with the younger generation will implement that just as they do a strength training program. Right. There needs to be a mental training program. And one of the interesting things I found, and I love doing these films because you learn so much. You just go on a journey kind of investigating, and you learn so much.
Right.
I found out as I was sitting in the NFL Network green room with all of my friends that are these former athletes, and they'd be like, Amber, tell me about what you're doing with Michael Phelps. I saw on Instagram you were shooting. And I would tell them, and they were ecstatic that somebody was finally telling the truth, and for them to tell me some of their stories along the way and open up to me. about their stories, and they would say, hey, when you want to do the sequel on NFL players, I'm in, count me in. I want to tell the truth, because there's a lot of cultural issues with NFL players, and for them, a lot of my friends, it was growing up maybe without a father or a single mother that was struggling, and then all of a sudden you're famous, and then going through all of that and not feeling like a sellout, and if you don't financially support everybody in your life, and then going broke, and then retiring, and all the depression that comes with retirement in sports. So there's so many angles we could have gone down, but I did realize how important it is and how many people really, really struggle in the darkness. How many athletes do.
I mean, for a young kid, for them to understand, it's even worse, because we deal with the suicide rate, and it just escalates. Right now, teaching virtually, I think people think it's a cakewalk for the teachers right now. I just had a written conversation with somebody about it, and they don't understand the mental health of a teacher dealing with preparing to do this, and the mental health of a kid who has to sit at home, get on a computer for 6 hours a day and deal with this. We don't want to be home, but it's just the way of the world currently.
It makes people feel isolated, and we're tribal by nature, right? Humans are tribal, and they want to feel like they're part of something. Right. And for kids right now, and especially athletic kids who are used to being part of a team, that's such an outlet, and that's part of their identity, and they're isolated, and that's something that parents need to pay attention to. And I'm glad that you, as a coach and a teacher, pay attention to that. And I think the teachers are aware of it. Sometimes the parents don't. They're so caught up in trying to keep their head above water right now. Right. A lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people are learning how to do their jobs from a new technological standpoint. And they're just getting by with their kids and putting them in front of the Zoom and not realizing, because kids can't verbalize, especially young kids, how they're feeling. Right. Maybe they act a certain way. So one of the biggest compliments I got from the film was the Orioles called me and asked me to speak to, they have like a book club with some of the minor league players. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you froze it.
Instead of a book, and wanted me to lead a discussion with the players. And it was really, I felt like this is why I do these things, because it's getting a conversation going. Here are these professional athletes asking me what I learned during my film. And I felt like if I could help one of them, then those 4 years of work was worth it.
Amber, you sound like a teacher, because that's what we go into every year. We say, if there's one kid that we get out of this class that has benefited from what we've given them, then it's worth it.
It's a gratifying profession. I come from, my uncle's a teacher, my mom's a teacher, my sister's a teacher. We have Frederick County, Baltimore County, Montgomery County. Both my aunts are teachers, one in Frederick County, one in Montgomery County. So I'm the only person in my family really that's not a teacher. So I have such a respect for the profession, and I realized the sacrifice, because I actually am a teacher now, and I hate to say that because I'm not a qualified teacher, but I'm an adjunct professor at USC, University of Southern California. I teach sports commentary, and I know the business, and I know how to help people with what I help young people that want to get into this business. But the teaching aspect, the syllabus, the grading, dealing with their emotional needs, I mean, everything. I really see what you guys go through, and I already had a tremendous amount of respect for teachers, but that's taken to a different level. But I do understand how gratifying that is when one of my kids got a job on air this year that just graduated. Wow. And I felt like a proud mama. I helped her negotiate her contract, and she was one. I only have one that got a job so far, but it was so cool. She was like, and she called me and said, hey, thanks for that game prep document assignment where you made me learn how to prepare to cover a game, because I used it day one in Texas. She moved to so that was neat to know what I taught her she's using in the real world.
So she did listen to you, and she followed through, and that's where you see, that's that aha moment for that kid, and that's your problem.
It was so great, because they hated that assignment. Those kids were like, this is so meticulous. Why are you making me look up a email address of a PR person for a team? And I was like, because day one, you're going to have to contact that PR person to get your credentials, find out where you park, where do you enter, where can you and cannot go as a member of the press. And so it really helped them to understand the process and the logistics, not just the theory of journalism.
Your second project you're working on, I know you shared some information about it with me. What's going on with that? I know you're trying to get another, what is it, like a documentary out as well?
Yeah, yeah. I'm working on another documentary, The Black Aces. We're not in production yet. We're just wrapping up the sizzle. I partner with Kelcrest Media here in Los Angeles, but it's a really strong film, and we're really excited to shop it and see what network gets it, because we think there'll be a bidding war. But for me, being a female in the NFL, there was a lot of challenges. And ever since I was a kid and just having strong women around me, I really fought hard for women's rights and always tried to be a beacon of light to younger women in our business. And I always felt this tremendous responsibility to do things right. And because I knew that all eyes were on me as a national sportscaster. And if I messed up, I was hurting the person coming behind me, because then they would have to prove themselves. And so I saw that struggle, and then I always really identified with my African-American friends. I didn't identify or understand, but I could empathize with the struggle that they were going through and some of the issues that they would talk to me about. And so I just really think it was important to give a voice to the voiceless and to tell stories that can make a change. And I did that with the mental health story. And when I'm looking for stories, I tell my students this: it's the ones that wake you up in the middle of the night. I come across a million stories. It's the ones that come across in the middle of the night, and I say, why don't people know about this? And the Black Aces was one of those stories. It was about African-American pitchers in baseball, and it's this exclusive fraternity that I've never heard anything about. And I worked in baseball. I mean, I covered teams. And so I found out about it through my coworker at Fox Sports, Dontrell Willis, the former Marlins pitcher.
Yeah.
We were doing a show together, and we were watching CC Sabathia get his 3,000th strikeout. And when he did, Dontrell stands up in the Fox studios and he goes, "Black Aces, baby." And I was like, what is that? So I started doing more research to find out there was only 15 20-game winners that are African-American, and they're a very close-knit group. The ones that are still alive. And so the more I dug into it, I wanted to tell the story of the Black Aces. So we started a year ago, and we were doing this a year ago, and then the uprising and the awakening and George Floyd and everything that's going on in our world right now happened. And it was like, wow, I have never been involved in a story that's more relevant to what is going on in the world. And if they say art imitates life and vice versa, that was exactly what was happening on this film. And so we partner with CC Sabathia, who's an EP on the project, and Kelcrest Media. And I think we have something really, really special. I was proud of The Way to Gold. It doesn't even come close to how proud I am of what we're doing here and what we're starting, the groundwork we're laying for the Black Aces.
I'm excited to watch that one as well. Both of them. I
Really cool.
don't get HBO, so sorry. But
I'll give you my password. Don't tell HBO.
I really want to watch it though, because it really interests me, and it sounds like something I can use as a teaching tool. So
I hope so. I hope so.
You've also ventured out into another position. You got yourself a VP position working in the video game industry. Share a little bit about that with us. You've got it all going on, young lady.
Oh my gosh. Well, it looks like that on Instagram. I always say that, everybody makes it look so great, but it's a lot of work. But I'm really, this was a really cool opportunity that I never thought. I wasn't seeking out, and it was a interesting space for me, because my whole life I plan things. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And this just kind of came on my plate. And I said, it was my friend Brian Baldinger at NFL Network, Baldy's Breakdowns. Yep. He said, I'm involved with these guys. They're developing an app. It's a competitive app, blah, blah, blah. And, the quarantine had just started. We didn't even know if sports was going to happen. My baseball show got canceled. Everything was, it was a perfect storm that led me to this. And he said, they're looking for female hosts. They don't have any. Do you think you could? I said, sure. It's not normally something I would do.
Right.
Definitely not for that rate. But I'm sitting here at home. So sure, Baldy, if it's your project, I'll do it. And so I started kind of talking to the creators of this app and realizing that they needed somebody with the production experience and the media experience. We have the tech side and the software and all of that, but they didn't really have somebody running that side of things and pulling it all together. And so they started picking my brain, and then finally I said, look, and this is something I've learned as a female, you got to stand up. And I said, look, you want my knowledge as an executive, you pay me as an executive.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So, and I would have done that 10 years ago. I said, oh yeah, I'm just happy to be here. I'm past the point in my life where I'm happy to be somewhere. I know I have value, I bring value, and I try to teach that to younger women. If you want something, you got to say it. So I said to the CEO, this is what I want. And he said, done. We know your value. So I came on, and this has been so much fun, developing a competitive app. It's rapid form trivia. We've signed amazing hosts. Our beta tests are through the roof. And I think it's something that can really take off. I just spoke to a famous Hollywood actor who I'm super excited about, that he believes in it. And he wants to sign on. He goes, yeah, I'll host whatever you want. He's like, I just want stock in the company. I said, sure, I can't pay you a good day rate, but I can give you some little bit of stock because it's backed by a public company. And so I think it's really going to take off. And I think gaming is where media is going anyway.
Yeah.
None of my kids, and you have kids, none of them are watching TV. Never. TV is not even a thing. So anything that's digital, developing this digital network. And now through this company, Clickstream, I have the ability. They just said, Amber, what other app do you want to develop? You come up with it. Like, wow. So the creative freedom for me has been it's just a sweet spot. It's exactly what I love doing. And I've gone out, and one thing that's been really nice is I've been able to give some of my friends that were great to me in the industry coming up who are out of work now. So many people are out of work in our industry. Right. I say, I need a cameraman, I need a producer, I need an editor. So many people have reached out and said, Amber, what do you have anything? And to be able to hire them and get them and their families through this that's what we do this for. We're people that have been family to me, to be able to give back to them and give them good people. It's not a charity case. People that kick ass. Right. A chance to work with them again is great for me, and a chance to give them some cash and get them through until sports kind of comes back full life has been really fun. Because
you know what? Somebody did that for you at some point, and you get, paying it forward, basically. And plus, I'm starting to see a little halo around your head now. From all the things you're doing to make
Not at all. If anybody knows me, that isn't it. But I'm loyal, and I appreciate loyalty. The people have been loyal to me and took care of me. My contract wasn't renewed at NFL Network because of financial reasons. I'd been there a long time. I was making a lot of money. That's the trend. And you don't know where you're going, and you reach out to people, and to see like Fox pick me up and Westwood, and these are all just people I worked with throughout the years, and said, oh, you're available? Yeah, I don't have a full time, but I'll give you this. And then that snowballs into something bigger. And so I want to do that for other people if I can. Who wouldn't want to do that? You don't want to see your friends struggling. Right. And I've put together a hell of a team at this app. I think people are overqualified, and that's why our production looks so great right now.
Pure gratification for you, though. In the end.
Sure.
And it doesn't even, talking to you, I know it doesn't even come down to you. It's the fact that you've got all these people as a team that are making it work, and nothing more satisfying. Now, you mentioned the NFL again. Let's talk a little NFL. Are we going to have football? I'm kind of scared they're not going to get through the season. What do you think?
You know what? I'm scared for a number of reasons. It's not just the coronavirus. It's what's happening with social justice right now, and the mind set of the players. They're in a tough place where they know they have a platform that they were given through their athletic ability, and they feel irresponsible to their generation and people that look like them if they don't use that platform to make the world a better place. And that's what we saw with the NBA this week, and then MLB, and that's what we've been hearing about. So we might not have a season because of that. I don't know. I know within the NFL, I have really good friends that my really good friend Aisha, she runs the Black Engagement Network and at NFL, and they're making an effort to make things better and make sure the players are heard, that the league is hearing the players. But as with anything, you never know if they're going to see eye to eye. And so I think that the season's up in the air because of that. The season's up in the air because of coronavirus, although that seems to be going pretty well through training camp, and the guys are together. One of my hosts for my new app is Josh Dobbs, who's a quarterback with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we went down to shoot with him in between training camp, and he said that he gets tested every day. I was asking him the process. So I think I would much rather see a bubble, but you can't do that necessarily with the NFL. So the way they're doing it seems to be working so far. So I hope we have a season. I think people are down right now, you know, as a nation, and just seeing some sort of unity and something to rally behind, and seeing your whole city rally behind one thing is a nice thought at this point in time as people are struggling.
The Ravens today made a statement. I don't know if you heard this or not. They made a great statement, which, like I said, it's really hard for me to not like that organization because I think they do so many things right. And
They do. They do. In the statement, I retweeted it and I said, "My city, my team."
Right.
And I'm so proud to be a part of the Ravens family. I consider myself that. It's bigger than football right now.
Oh,
Football is a child's game, and people are losing their lives, and people are in pain, and they're scared for their children, and they have been for a long time. And, you know, not to get too deep into it, but just having friends that really express to me their fear as parents, you know, raising their children that are Black Americans, like the different experiences I have versus them. I'm really thankful that they open up to me about that, because as a parent, I can't not hear their pain, and I can't not just say anything but I'm here and what do you need? And I can't even imagine your fear. And now then I try to put myself in the position of the players of the Ravens, and to have it affecting your community at such a high level so often, and your family that's living in another place, it would be hard to go play football. You know, you don't want to practice. You're tired, you're beat down. You don't know if the world's ever going to be better for your kids. So for the Ravens to kind of try to make change and try to unite, it drives me crazy on social media when I see people saying, good, maybe those millionaires can go get a job now if they don't want to practice. And I was like, how can you as a responsible person know that you have a voice and you have a platform and you can use it to make life better for not just your kids, but a whole generation? Yeah. That's called a sacrifice. Why not sacrifice for that? And they're getting a lot of hate their way.
It's going to be an ongoing battle. And I hope at some point, I know there are some things that are trying to be put in place. And I hope at some point all becomes a fruition and we just start seeing things from a different light. We have better things put into play. I personally, as a teacher, I'm fighting for all the right reasons. And I don't need anybody to tell me how to think and feel. I know we have, just because we're going to be online teaching, we have things in place where we're going to be talking with kids about how things need to roll out, how we need to make change going forward with their opinion, because it's their generation. They're the ones replacing us. They're coming up behind us. These guys have the perfect platform to go ahead and do it. Unified, they'll get it accomplished. Singularly, they're not going to get it accomplished. I think it'll be a struggle if each individual or each team takes a different approach. But as
it has to be together. It's enough. I think that's what it's just enough. You don't want to see it anymore. They don't want to see it anymore. And I'm fully behind the players and what they're doing. I've made no secret about that. And I lose followers and I lose supporters. But my viewpoint is if you don't have the ability to open your eyes or open your ears and listen to people that are telling you they're in pain and their house is burning down, and you come up, like you can only see your little bubble or your little world, then you're not a good person in my book. You're limited in your views. And I try to empathize with people, and I think like the human race is the strongest race. You know, we all need to be humans together. And if we can't listen when somebody else says I'm hurting and I'm fearing for my children and I want it to change, I got nothing for you if you can't relate to that.
I just said to somebody earlier today, I said, I can't believe we're still having the struggles in 2020 that they had in 1960s. It just doesn't.
We're still having the same struggles that they had in 1846. I made a commitment to really, I'm a voracious reader, but I put the challenge out to my followers. Read a book that's diverse, that's something different, a point of view that's different. And my good friend Steve Weich is a reporter with NFL Network, and he's leading the charge as far as diversity and inclusion at NFL Network. And he brought Frederick Douglass's, from Baltimore, biography, and I'm reading it right now, and it's it's just eye-opening that the same speeches that Frederick Douglass was giving, same thing that we're hearing today. It's like literally word for word, and that makes me embarrassed as a country. 200 plus years later, we still can't get it together the way that like European countries have.
Right. It's time to turn the page. I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do a little bit of football then to wrap.
Sorry. Yeah, that is what's going on in football.
Fine. I gave you the platform, and I want to hear what you have to say. And I
Thank you.
You're going. Brady and Gronk reunited in Tampa. Your feelings on that? Are they going to be a Super Bowl contender, or is this just a couple of guys coming from New England with a reputation who has that opportunity to take their team to another level there? What do you think?
I don't know if I could say they'd be a Super Bowl contender, because people forget that the reason that the Patriots were so dominant in the Patriot way, it was the marriage of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. They caught lightning in a bottle with those two. And let's see how they both do without each other. Bruce Arians is amazing. I love Bruce Arians. He's a quarterback, he knows how to look at Tom Brady and work with him. He's a player's coach. I think that's a little different than Brady, and Brady was looking at what he's used to with Belichick. I think Brady's looking forward to being at a point in his career where he wants to call the shots. And if he says, I need a deep threat receiver, that the Bucs can go out and get him. I want my tight end, the Bucs go out and get him. And I think that was a frustration for him last year. And in New England is he didn't feel like he had, any outside threats, any deep threats. It was all just kind of dink and dunk, and that's what he had. Now, some people also argued, well, could his arm do that still at 42 years old? Because we didn't get to see it very often, so we don't know. And so we'll get to see that now with Mike Evans, and he has the deep threat. Gronk has been out for a year. I love Gronk. Gronk's got to put on still some more weight. And yes, that telepathy or whatever you call it that he has with Brady is something you can't teach. But also Father Time is undefeated. And Gronk spent many of his last couple of years in New England injured. That's why he couldn't stand to be banged up anymore. He told us that before the last AFC Championship game that he played in 2 years ago.
Right.
He just knew he was done. And so, I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of a Peyton Manning situation, like when Peyton left the Colts and went to Denver and found a couple more years of life. If anybody can do it, it's Tom Brady. I just don't doubt him. That's a tough division with the Saints being in the same division. So let's see. I can't make predictions. I got to see it on the field to see what it.
Brady has a lot of weapons there too. They got a couple of running backs now. He has OJ Santiago's still there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's got a lot of stuff going for him there.
He does, but it's hard to just come out of nowhere and all of a sudden be fantastic. Like an organization. The 49ers did it last year. They really turned it around, but that doesn't happen often.
Was that a marriage there between Belichick and Brady, or did they coexist?
I think it was a coexisting marriage like many people have. I put it together, if you're going to look at it as a marriage, this is how I would put it. You stay together for the kids because you're better as a family unit. But when the lights go out, were they bedfellows? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they had a tremendous amount of respect for each other and their history. But it's two very strong-willed people. And when you're together with anybody for 20 years, a marriage for 20 years, that's a tough situation. And I think it was time to move on. And Brady just knew it was time to move on. But I think there's probably still a lot of love between the two of them.
So basically, Tom was tired of sleeping in the guest room, and he said, I'm out of here.
He went and got a younger, prettier, So, I think that's what it was. It was stale. And I think he didn't think he was being heard in the last year as far as what pieces he needs around him to succeed. There was a point we were covering a game out there where he said, we heard him say, I got nobody to throw to. You could hear him say that. So, and then he goes to Belichick and says, you need to bring in somebody else, and that doesn't happen. And it started in the off season when they had a chance to bring in some talent. And I think he just felt like he was ignored.
I don't think Antonio Brown was an answer there either.
That was their answer. And yeah, we knew that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. Those days are done. So Belichick now, he's got Cam Newton. Talk about a personality there. Is that going to work? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. Look, I think it's the best option. I don't think going to week 1 with Jared Stidham was the answer, a 4th round draft pick that hasn't started. Cam Newton, no doubt, when healthy, is a dynamic player and underrated as a thrower, completely underrated as a thrower, because it took a while in his career for his throwing game to match his running game. But Bill Belichick has a history of taking people that are struggling or underperforming for what their potential is and making superstars out of them. I mean, look at guys like Wes Welker or Danny Amendola, or, there's just so many names where they were nobodies, and they probably would have been nobodies.
Right? Even Edelman? Would you?
Oh, Edelman, yeah, I could have, Edelman, my gosh. You put Edelman, and that's going to be interesting to see what happens with Edelman this year without Tom Brady, because they were so synchronized. Right. This is going to be a really humbling year, I think, for the New England Patriots. But if anybody can get Cam Newton to reach the potential that Cam Newton has, I think it's a matter of understanding Cam, because the players that I work with and have spoken to really like Cam. They don't think he's a bad personality or a cancer or a problem in the locker room. The players don't feel like that. That's kind of an image that's outside of the organization, that was outside of the Carolina Panthers. But does Bill Belichick, you mesh with him and you go to the next level, or you're out in a year. And I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know. We'll have to see. And I think there had to be a maturation process on Cam's side as well, that, hey, I have a new beginning. If I buy into this Patriot way, which is regimented, it's not about you. There's no time for superstars. There's no time for pouting. It's about the team. If he recognizes the potential there, then I think he could really take off, and this could be a great year, because they have a good defense.
I thought it was kind of interesting that I read maybe a week or two ago how he said he didn't feel like the number 1 guy there. It's
because it still is a competition, and that's what Bill Belichick says. But he's always saying that. Because Cam's not used to being in that position where you're coming to camp not knowing if you're the number 1 guy or not. That's a new area. He was humbled with Kyle Allen and having him come along last year and get them off to a 6-0. I think they were 0-2 when he took over, and then went on 6 in a row. So I don't know what he meant by, I don't know if I feel like the number 1 guy, like they're not stroking my ego enough. But if he expected that, then he's going to fail.
So your guy, Lamar Jackson, we're going to go with that, you being a Ravens fan. MVP season. Can he replicate it? Can he get that monkey off his back, though, in the playoffs? Because he's 0-2. He felt like they were underprepared, I believe he said. That they weren't quite prepared for what Tennessee brought to the table. Your thoughts on that?
Look, Tennessee, Mike Vrabel brought a great game plan. He was very Belichickian, his old coach. And I do think he outcoached John Harbaugh, and that doesn't happen often because John Harbaugh is an amazing coach. But I think it was a little too easy for the Ravens last year. They were gliding. They were dominating, and nobody could figure them out. And they did in the playoffs. So, yes, Lamar Jackson, I think, can have a hell of a follow-up year because he's another year older. And people underestimate, again, kind of like Cam, like he has the ability to throw. And when he does have the ability to throw, I mean, and you combine that with the running game that Ingram brings, the potential for like the play action, I think, could be really dangerous. And then the fact that you do have Mark Andrews, who's another year older. I mean, he was really young at tight end. All together, that kind of 3-headed monster, it's like the triplets. And then like the Hollywood Browns, the young receivers that they have are going to take another step as well. So if they were that dominant under Greg Roman and what they did. I think if they were that dominant last year, and they were all in their first or second year, the stars.
Yeah.
Wow, let's see them in this. And I think the defense is really, I mean, the defense is amazing this year. Getting Calais Campbell in there. I think getting rid of Earl Thomas. People say, oh, no, there's a hole. You know, he was kind of a one-trick pony. You know, it wasn't exactly, I don't think it was as big of a loss as people think it is. So that defensive line, look out for the Baltimore Ravens. It's going to be really impressive. I have them and the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game.
That was going to be my next question. You know, you forgot to add in J.K. Dobbins.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. They're loaded. You know, I had to give Ozzie Newsome credit because his last draft that brought in Hollywood and Lamar and Mark Andrews, that was his last draft before he handed it over to Costin. He killed it. Like he always.
He was a fantastic general manager. I thought he did great things there.
Because he was a talent evaluator first. He was a scout.
Right, which is perfect. So you said you see Baltimore and Kansas City in the AFC Championship. Who you see in the NFC?
Well, I'm going to put the 49ers in the NFC Championship. You know what? I really haven't thought about who would. I've been asked a lot, like who's going to be in the Super Bowl, but who would I put taking on the 49ers? I think out of that division, I mean, I think you look at the Seahawks and the 49ers, both going to be great. I'm like slowly going through the divisions in my head here and what changes they've made. Nobody from the NFC East. I'm sorry, I know people in Baltimore. I don't think Dallas. I mean, people in Washington. That's a mess down there. Dallas. Maybe Dallas gets it together. Who do you think? Throw out some team and I'll tell you who. Maybe the Saints.
Yeah, I was going to say the Saints.
I like the Saints. I like Drew Brees on borrowed time. Like, all right, let's get it done.
He just seems to find that next gear when he needs to on the field.
I don't know about the North. I don't think I see the Packers. I think there's going to be some tumultuous time there with Aaron Rodgers and them drafting a quarterback. Definitely not the Bears.
I think Rodgers is going to struggle with their head coach too. I think
it could be the Saints and the 49ers.
Yeah.
Say that again?
I said Rodgers might struggle a little bit with that head coach this year. He seems to be a coach killer to a certain degree. And I
don't know if that's totally fair because, you know, I'm good friends with James Jones, who was his receiver. I mean, he defends Aaron as the greatest quarterback ever. And that's not – James isn't going to blow smoke. You know, he's telling it like he sees it. And I think, though, it takes the right coach to understand what Aaron brings and that it's a collaboration with Aaron. It's not a dictatorship. I think Aaron just wants to be heard and wants to have an influence on the offense. And we'll see what LaFleur does. I don't know what their relationship will be like going forward.
If nothing else, he's at least earned that. He's, 36, 37 years old now?
He's on the Brady level. He deserves to be a part of coming up with the offense, and his input should matter.
Let's 1 second. I know you're not a Steeler fan, but you think Ben will return to form? You think Ben will have a great season? He said he's been playing with that bad elbow for 10, 12 years. He's thin. He looks good throwing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look at his weapons. He's as good as – I don't know much about their offensive line. I haven't studied it this year of who's returning. But, you know what, is James Conner healthy? I was out at their camp last year. They had some young receivers. I don't know. It's always going to be the Ravens and the Steelers in that division. It really just is. The Browns have a really good roster. Actually, they have a playoff roster. The Browns do. Does it come together? Like, it looks great on paper. Does it come together? They could be a force to be reckoned with. But look, Ben, when you're banged up a lot like that and you're coming back after not playing, more often than not, it's very difficult to have a resurgence in your career. Ben is a warrior. I get that. But he's only as good at that age as the pieces around him. So that's what I would have to, if I could answer this question after really taking a hardcore look at their roster. to see what I think. Like, how do they match up with Jarvis Landry and Baker Mayfield and Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson. I always look at, like, who are you playing? Who are you playing twice a year? And how do you match up with them? I look at that Ravens defensive line coming at Ben Roethlisberger. I definitely give the edge to the Ravens defensive line.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fun. I mean, I know I'm a bit of a home, but
Pittsburgh is very fast. Didi Pinkabala just said the other day, I read her quote, that this is the fastest defense that Mike Tomlin has ever had, and maybe the fastest defense in the NFL. So
who's the defensive backs coach there that they brought on last year that really made a lot of Austin, thank you. Yes, we kind of saw that starting to happen with the personnel changes last year, and what he was trying to do. So I agree. Aditi is a good friend of mine. If you want information on the Steelers, follow Aditi. She's very entrenched there. But yes, I think the secondary is going to be a strength of the Steelers because they're going to be fast. And then you have the young linebacker. Why am I blanking on the guy?
Bush.
Bush, thank you. Who can go sideline to sideline? Yeah, very versatile, very athletic. So, yeah, like you said, it's gonna be a good matchup between those teams. I think the AFC North is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah,
as always is.
You've got three really young quarterbacks, and then you got the old dog in Ben. So.
Which we could have a young quarterback there before the season's over.
I love football, so it doesn't matter how you throw it out there at me. I'm good with it. Pick your Super Bowl champ.
Man, I think it comes out of the AFC. And I love to go with the Ravens. That's always my first choice. But it's tough to go back-to-back. Hasn't been done since 2003, 2004 Patriots.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough for the Chiefs. So maybe I'll go with the Ravens because I do think it comes out of the AFC.
Yeah, I think the competition level, especially because you couldn't pick a second team to go to the NFC Championship.
Not off the top of my head. I've been working on my app and I was doing my document. Like, I wasn't thinking about the AFC or the NFC today. And yeah, the fact that I can't just go, yeah, I see Dallas, or yeah, I see it took me a while to get to the Saints. I think that is indicative of where the AFC is versus the NFC, which for a long time, the NFC was much deeper the past couple of years, but we'll see.
You are a passionate person about your career. You've been deeply entrenched, as I love to say, in sports virtually all your life. But if you wouldn't have chose the sports field or journalism per se, what direction might you have gone in college?
Oh, geez. I probably would have gone into law. I have a real interest in understanding the law and constitutional law, especially in people's rights. So I might have been a civil rights attorney and fighting for people that can't fight for themselves. I love to talk. I love to argue. I love to think I'm smarter than people sometimes. My husband will agree with that. But I love learning and I love retaining knowledge. And so I think I would have gone to law school. I still think about it sometimes, maybe going back. I don't have time for all of it, but I think I would have been a lawyer.
Yeah, I get it. My last piece for you is a segment I call Decade Definers, and I want you to define your decade by telling me your 4 most memorable moments in sports that you've been involved in. Can you share those with me?
Yeah, this is like off the top of my head, so this is a little tough to, I hope I do some of them justice. I guess it probably starts as a young fan. Probably the first, I kind of remember, and there's a couple sporting events that really shaped my, just my memory or maybe my passion or just interest. I remember the Orioles winning the '83 World Series. I'll never forget Cal Ripken getting that final catch. Yeah. I remember my dad going to see the Redskins play in Tampa for the Super Bowl against the Raiders. And that was such a big deal. He got to go to the Super Bowl. Right. Something I wouldn't get to do until later. I remember thinking that was so cool. And then I remember the Colts leaving Baltimore
Oh, wow.
in '84 and watching it on the Mayflower trucks, and my dad kind of explaining to me like this is a big deal for the people of Baltimore. He was a Redskins fan, but and then Lynn Bias's death. As a University of Maryland fan, and that just really stuck with me, and it still does to this day. It hurt. So I think those were like the childhood things that there a lot of great moments and terrible moments too. But the highlights, I guess, going forward of my career, I already mentioned one about being in the dugout and having Cal Ripken call me by name was really awesome.
Who'd you call after that? I know you picked up the phone and called somebody to say, hey.
Probably my mom or dad. I mean, I'm sure it was my mom or dad because I'm close to them. Covering the Ravens in the Super Bowl as my first Super Bowl as an NFL Network anchor, because I started, this was 2012, I started training camp as a reporter with MASN going out to Westminster. And then September 1st or something, I moved to LA and started covering the season as an anchor for NFL Network. And then to end up in New Orleans, which is the best Super Bowl city, by the way. Sure. It's the best, hands down. Every Super Bowl needs to be in New Orleans. The best. So to be there, and these guys that I was friends with and had covered since their rookie seasons, like Joe Flacco, and it was Ray Rice at the time, and those guys, Haloti Ngata, and Ray Lewis, to see him there, it was really, really, really cool. And I looked really great because I knew so much about, I had so much in-depth, intimate knowledge. So my shows were so great because I could bring that to the network, and the lights going out and Beyonce performing. It was such a cool experience. I was like, wow, I could live this life for a while. What is that? 3? 4. Probably, now, I mean, hosting Thursday Night Football was a really big deal for me, as I said earlier in the show, and really feeling that bigness of the event. But now for me, I think the highlight was knowing that I'm kind of going right back to journalism and creating in a totally different form of filmmaking, and really having a chance to call my own shots, pick my own stories, and give athletes a voice when at a time where they're really, really trying to find their voice more so than any other decade. It used to be shut up and dribble, and they're not anymore. And they have so much to say and so much we can learn from a society. As a society, we can learn from them. To be able to shed the light onto them with the skills that I've learned over the past 20 years as a storyteller is exciting. And it's a new chapter, and it's a new passion built off of the old passion. And this was never part of the trajectory that I thought of. And I find so much enjoyment doing it right now.
And you just keep going upward because you're going to take that risk. And I admire and think you're going to reach wherever you want to reach in terms of your career aspirations. And I'm sure your family's very proud of everything that you've accomplished to this point. I know your uncle is. There's no doubt about that.
Well, thank you. And I'm proud to be from my family. I hope I make them proud. I came from a very strong base, a strong foundation of people that loved me and believed in me. And I think they enjoy the ride, being able to bring mom and dad to the Super Bowl. And that's stuff like that has been really cool. But I want to point out, and I know a lot of young people probably listen to your podcast, I fail a lot. And I've been in really places where you invest a lot of your time and it fails, and you think it's going to go well, and it doesn't. And I can't say I've always handled it the best. I'm not going to act like I'm this master pivoter. I've learned how to pivot, and I've learned how failure puts you in a different direction. If you get creative and you say, okay, you can lick your wounds for a little bit. I had a friend say, lick your wounds for a little bit, sure, but eventually you got to move forward. And it's okay to feel sorry for yourself when you fail, but as long as you say, all right, I'm going to give myself this amount of time to sulk, and then I'm going to come up with something else, because even a rat doesn't bump its head against the same maze, the blockage in a maze. It'll find another way around. And I've learned to do that the hard way. And if I could give any message to some of your students, it would be, see failure as inevitable, welcome it, embrace it, because you grow through failure, and the better things in life happen right after your biggest failures.
Right. Thank you. That was really insightful, because I will pass that on to them. They need to know that. They hear that message from me, and they'll hear it from me consistently. but from somebody who has reached a total different level of success than I could possibly imagine. It's very insightful to hear that. So I want to thank you for being on the podcast. You've been a great guest. Your worldly travels and your experiences are fantastic, and I wish you nothing but success going forward.
Mark, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun. Shout out Uncle Timmy. Hi.
Take care and good luck with all your endeavors going forward, okay?
Thank you. You as well, and take care of my hometown.
I will do that.